Our first and only real DM tip this week was that if a player perma-dies, make them part of the process. In my games and for a lot of my colleagues, death has to remain a very real and tangible threat in the game in order to inspire the stakes and risks that you want to leverage things like emotional response and commitment from your characters to the campaign. But of course, nobody wants to think about your beloved character dying before their time or unceremoniously. So I really believe that this is a great option to bring DM and player alike, where when a player does meet their untimely or timely demise, that your players be brought into that process as well, so that you can continue to craft the legacy narrative of those characters together. So think about it. When you have a character who's on the verge of perishing or perishes in battle, give them their own how do you want to do this moment around their death, just like you would when they are the instruments of death for so many other NPCs and creatures the world over. Next up, we went into player tips, which were really driven around online play or virtual tabletop play this week. So I asked our online D&D players, what are some of your best tips for playing in an online or virtual tabletop format? We had 3 real standout options here. 1, to listen and be ready to stop talking if someone cuts in. I really like this because it is unique to the virtual tabletop environment when you're playing through a VoIP system or a community voice like Discord or Google Hangouts or Zoom or any other conferencing software. Sometimes it can be difficult for people to interject. So in 2 ways, you want to make sure that you're listening for people who are trying to contribute so that you can take a pause and give them the space to do so. And additionally, that you're taking a pause in case anybody wants to speak up but may not have felt like they've had the opportunity. We don't have the luxury of being able to read the table and identifying when someone's about to jump in like we do in person. So that's a great tip that comes from @Shagrazir under the handle DM in the Sky. Thanks for your contribution this week. The next 2 come from community regular @Pleasant aka Angela, who's had some really significant experience playing with players online and DMing online. Number 1 from Angela is to speak up if you can't see what the DM's referencing on the map. Now in VTTs like Roll20 or Fantasy Grounds, oftentimes the DM will be looking at a section of the map and speaking to the action that's playing in that part of the map. But on your side, you might be looking at a completely different environment or focusing on a different element. So if you don't see what the DM's describing accurately, speak up and say, hey, I'm not sure if I'm looking at the right thing, just to make sure that you can get on board, because it's going to be a lot harder for you to catch up later on in the game. And don't hesitate. We've all been there. We've all had those questions. No one around the table is going to judge you for that, or at least no one around the table should judge you for that. The second tip from Angela is also related to being able to stay in tune with what's happening in the virtual playing field. Specifically, if you have a red-green deficiency that prevents you from determining the contrast on on-screen objects, make sure that you bring that up to your DM as well. This can be a little bit more sensitive and personal, so feel free to take it to DMs or contact your Dungeon Master directly. But absolutely, there are tools in those VTTs to help increase contrast, make sure that on-screen elements are viewable and accessible to everybody. So don't hesitate to talk to your DM about ways that we can work together to help make this a more positive and enjoyable experience for you as an online player. And with that, it's a wrap for DM tips and community news. Let's get into the goods on Matt Mercer and Wizards of the Coast pending release of the Explorer's Guide to Wildmount. Here's everything we know and all the info I was able to grab around the nitty-gritty of what's coming in the new compendium.